everyone. Welcome. We are here on this Monday night in December. I'm Kelly Harkins. I'm the director of the American Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Media Track at Dragon Con. And we are here to talk about, oops, getting a little bit of echo if somebody's got headsets. So just kind of make sure that, sorry, that's the joy of live here. But boy, that's going to get distracting. Anybody, I just want to make sure everybody, I see Mo. Jen, do you have a headset on?
I've got earbuds in, yes.
Okay. Is it? Are you all hearing that too? Just want to make sure.
I don't hear anything.
No. Okay. Very
I
weird.
see
Then I'm getting
nothing.
that.
I hear
Then
nothing.
then I will ignore what's going on in my ears. So anyway, we're here in this December night to talk about the Marvel Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special. So we wanted to kind of get a sense of, kind of the live moment, what people saw, what people were, if anybody enjoyed it, didn't enjoy it, because it's a little different, even though it's definitely a homage to many of those old classic Christmas specials. So, first off, we'll start off with introducing our panelists here. So, Damien, since you are to my left, right, whichever, why don't we start there?
Oh,
You're muted, I think.
No video for Jen, no sound for him.
hey. Together, they're a panelist.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll work it out. All right. We'll go to Wayland as Dave figures this out.
If you need to, you could switch to the computer audio.
Indeed. I write under the name Waylon Smith, unless you really hate this presentation, and then my name is Jim Butcher. He knows I do the joke. I've been a lifelong comic book geek. I've been reading comics steadily since the mid-'80s or so. I write reviews for all comic book-based TV shows and movies on a site called comicbookclog.com, and a lot of my fiction sales have been superhero-related.
All right. And then Raster.
Well, as always, I am a fixture. I've been hanging around the American Sci-Fi track for since '97. There are attendees who aren't that old, so I am a multi-genre fan, hardcore Trekkie. Um, Became a really big fan of the DC verse uh, back when it was relatively young. Was really impressed with how Marvel has stepped up and created a multimedia empire based around the comics, and done it better than the competition, I I believe. So the Guardians is kind of both a pinnacle of that effort and kind of a nice sideshow. On to you.
Okay. Well, we seem to be having some technical issues on a lot of these things. Damien, now I'm showing you're muted. You're muting yourself. So, and I can't unmute you. So, all right. Well, we will just kind of see what happens here. So, Jen, even though you are playing the Invisible Woman, your CG will be added later, I'm sure. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Jen Johnson, and I have been a Marvel fan since about 2010-ish. I came in a couple years late to the game, but Marvel is my baby. I'm a big Captain America fan. Unfortunately, you cannot see the room that I'm currently in, or you would know that. um, but Guardians of the Galaxy it became a top favorite of mine as soon as the first movie came out, and just to know that there was a holiday special coming was even better. I was super excited to hear about that, and I have since watched it about 20 times. But that's for another story. A friend of mine was an extra, but that's okay.
All right, Rob.
Hi, I am also a longtime comic book pop culture sci-fi nerd, and I love the Marvel movies, and I am particularly fond of Guardians because I came to it later than the rest of the Marvel franchise, and I just took to it pretty quick. So,
All right, Damon, we are back. Oh no. I'll tell you what, why don't you go ahead and drop out and then I'll bring you back in. We'll see if that kind of helps. Sometimes it does that sometimes. So,
A bit of
Not-
management always works to get everything to come around.
oh yeah, the old off and on. So,
If that doesn't work, you'll be contributing via interpretive dance.
absolutely. So, all right. Well, we'll start with the simple question here. On a scale of like 1 to 10, how do you feel this rated as far as Christmas specials? So, Waylon, since now you're over here.
I'll go like 8 or 9 actually. It did capture the feel of a lot of those early like after school special Christmas special things from back when I was a kid. I thought it was very entertaining. They hit a lot of really good notes. I really enjoyed it.
All right. And Raster?
You know, one of the things that really impressed me about it was all the callbacks, and not just in their own series, but all over the place. I mean, I mentioned before we came on that we're going to be finding Easter eggs in this thing for years. And the storyline was a little simple, but you know, you kind of want simple for your Christmas special to keep it light and fun. I really, really enjoyed the fact that they really didn't hold back, and it looked as though they were having as much fun doing it as we were watching it. And you know, that's something I've missed since COVID. A lot of the comebacks from a lot of shows have been a little bit strained, and it looked like they hadn't even had a break, except maybe for some facial hair on someone. You know,
Okay. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, give me a number.
I'd lock that down at a 10. Compared to other shows and other movies, Christmas specials.
Right.
Yeah.
Focusing
The
on
negative
the
12
Christmas.
being one in the 70s that we don't talk about.
Yes. All right. Rob.
I generally am not a big Christmas person. I tend to love the specials more as like kitschy entertainment and fun rather than getting me in any sort of holiday spirit. But this, I'm giving an 8 because it actually, one, it did that, and two, it did, as he had just alluded to, it did do a lot of call outs to things from my childhood. And I also think that it was sort of, for Marvel, a really nice exhale after everything we've gone through with Wakanda Forever and some of the more heavier stuff we've had in recent films. So I thought it was a hoot, and it was just fun, and it didn't take itself too seriously, and I loved just how goofy it was.
All right. And what's your number?
Oh, I gave it an 8.
Okay. All right, Jen.
Oh wow. Like Rob, I'm not too much of a big Christmas kind of person. I do enjoy the movies about the holiday and the season. But for me, I kind of separated it as a holiday special versus an actual Marvel property. And holiday special, I loved it. It screamed Christmas, it screamed holiday, and trying to find that perfect gift for someone. But as for, as a Marvel, I liked it better than the second Guardians movie, actually. So that's pretty high up there for me. And overall, I give it, I'm going to go the same. I'm going to say about an 8.
Okay. So, Damien, hopefully you can introduce yourself now. And what we're doing is we're kind of giving gut reaction thoughts on where this related on as a Christmas special, 1 to 10.
Can everyone hear me
Yeah.
at this point? All right. Now that I have audio. All right. I'm just a guy, right? I show up when they call me and talk about things, right? I'm the Tyrion of Dragon Con at this point. I eat and I know things. That's what I do, right? I'm a panelist here. I'm a panelist over on Extract. I'm a panelist over on horror. I'm a panelist on urban fantasy. Um, right. I do a couple of podcasts. I do one with Rob, the Weekend Justice podcast over at needcoffee.com. And we all, my compatriots here, all have done a lot of things over the years for Dragon. So there's that. I have the Stuff We Like, Stuff We Hate podcast with some other friends from Dragon Con that do photography and cosplay. So yeah, I do a little cosplay. I do a little paneling here and there at various conventions and a little podcasting. And if we're going to question exactly how I feel about Christmas, okay, just so you know, right?
Is that the limited edition Krampus?
This is the original one from Mythic Legions from last year. They released a new one this year in red. So
They're such big GD heroes.
This is the first one, and yes, he has a dedicated place on the mantle during the holidays because that's exactly how I feel about Christmas. And as far as holiday specials rank, and I'm the worst one to ask for, answer any of this because, quite frankly, if you ask me about Christmas movies, I'm just gonna go A Nightmare Before Christmas, right?
Yeah.
That's my 10. Everything else ranks below that. With that being said, definitely. Well, hold on. Let me retract that. Die Hard is 10.
Yes.
It's on, and Nightmare Before Christmas is on par with that. So they're each 10s, and everything else is below those two. With that being said, definitely, I would give this one roughly about a 7, right? I enjoyed it, right? But then with Guardians, you get so much goofiness that goes on with it. Sometimes it's a little distracting, right? You're like, all right, guys, let's get this going. So, yeah, that's me. I'm at 7.
That's fair.
Bah humbug.
7 doesn't sound that bah humbuggy to me. I will say I love Christmas. So unlike you guys, I am a big Christmas person. But I will say that I loved it. I think it had some flaws. But yeah, the callbacks, I mean, you could tell James Gunn is of an older generation is, the way it opened, a lot of those things. I mean, did you all even notice that the Marvel stream that they always do at the beginning was all the Christmas issues as opposed to, just the kind of standard stuff? Because, because Santa Claus is a character in the MCU. Yep. So, but yeah, a lot of those things definitely had a feel for some of those old Rankin and Bass Christmas stuff. I almost swore a Bumble was going to walk in there somewhere. But a lot of those elements, I appreciate it. I always kind of like those tongue-in-cheek Easter egg parts, and James Gunn is always good at that. So I would definitely. I'm kind of like it. I'll split the difference. I'll say 8.5. So, because they do push the humor a little too much sometimes, but in the end. So my next question, and we'll start with Rastor on this one, is: do you feel like now because it's the MCU, there's always lots of things they have to kind of stick in there too, because it's like, okay, we got to drop the next, crumbs to lead you to the next thing. Do you feel like those crumbs distracted or helped the storyline?
Good question. And I'm going to answer that they're both. And because the MCU is all about crumbs. I mean, from even when they didn't know it was the MCU yet, we had crumbs in the very first Iron Man movie that they then built entire frameworks around. And they did a good job of that in this special. Some of them were schmaltzy. Some of them were. I suspect some of them were decoys, because the Guardians has always, in this incarnation, been kind of a pastiche and a commentary on the rest of the MCU. Uh, Not quite to the point that She-Hulk is, but somewhat approaching that. So some of the things that uh, were near the end that were brought up were obviously they were big, and it's like they tore someone's off and hit someone's arm off and hit you with it. I mean, honestly, they are very obvious. But
I'll also put the caveat: if people are watching this and they haven't seen it, don't worry about spoilers.
Yeah, I mean, we're we try not to.
We're going.
Like I said, it's. I think they did a good job of both being silly and locking themselves firmly into the continuity, while also establishing that Kevin Bacon exists in the Marvel universe as himself, and that's pretty damn cool.
All right, Rob, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, also Kira Sedgwick is now also in the Marvel universe too.
Yes.
Which really brings it up to a whole dramatic level. Pretty much said everything. I just, for me, it was so refreshingly goofy and offbeat that it was nice, right? I think I talked about that before. I really especially liked how Palm and Dave Bautista had stuff to do. They weren't really lost in the background, and those characters got a lot of things to develop and do and have wacky adventures. And the thing that they did well is that the main characters were in it, but they weren't obtrusive or so heavy-handed that they brought it down, right? Like Karen Gillan is in it very little, but when she's in it, she's got one or two lines. She's got a couple lines where she's just a couple scenes where she's just making faces, and it works and it's perfect, right?
So grumpy. Yeah.
But I mean, it's just the way that they did that with so many people doing. There's so many Guardian people anyway, plus
the
Kevin
arm.
Bacon. Yeah,
the arm.
The arm is great. They didn't really do as much with Groot as they've done with other stuff in the past, which I thought was also kind of nice because you didn't get the whole "I am Groot" gag all the time. And the musical element of it was also really interesting and new and kind of different. So I loved that too. And I mean, really, all it needed was Paul Lynde, and it would have been like absolutely complete.
And Phyllis Diller.
Oh yeah, and Phyllis Diller, yeah, as a special, right? If this would have been like done 25 years ago, we would have had those two and Ruth Buzzy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm taking this to stupid levels. I'm sorry.
No, they need to do this somehow.
But I love the fact that it did have things to do that were canon, and it also had things that were light. People forget that the Guardians were supposed to kind of be the silly, fun Marvel thing, right? And they'd kind of gotten away with that with some of the stuff with Endgame and some of the other things. It'd gotten pretty dark. So having it be kind of light again, I thought was good. And I thought that even the stuff that was really schmaltzy, it totally worked. And just the jokes about, them not knowing what Christmas is and taking stuff off the lawns and
like your stupid little hook man.
Your stupid little hook man. The
very Nightmare Before Christmas.
Well, the other thing that it did too is it really, and I'm probably showing my age here. It really harkened back to a lot of really great slapstick comedy stuff from the 40s and 50s. So a lot of the Christmas specials or Christmas stuff that you saw in the 40s and 50s that wasn't Miracle on 34th Street or It's a Wonderful Life were really filled with slapstick comedy. And I love the fact they used Santa Claus versus the Martians in it. I thought that was cool too.
Yes.
Yes. All right, Jen. Now we have a face.
At least a face, if not, full video. I'm still trying. I loved everything in it, and like all of the little things that are callbacks to not just previous Guardians, but previous
Mhm.
Marvel, and also the fandom. This was very much a fandom service special, from Mantis and Drax running into the plaza where all the cosplayers are, and being recognized for that. That was something that I really enjoyed. But I also really enjoyed being able to just pause the video and show my family, hey, so well, this is the callback for this. They hated me by the end of the night, but it happens. And I was just so excited that it was everything I loved all in one. And it's made it to a point where I will be watching it every holiday season, because it's kind of become an instant classic. It's like one of those good ones. And I think one thing I absolutely adore the most, I don't think anybody said it yet, is that the very first part of it was animated, because that was a definite call for me to the Christmas specials of my childhood. They were animated, like Garfield and Peanuts. And so that kind of tied in all of the Christmas specials for me.
All right. All right, Damien.
Eh,
Our Grinch.
yeah, I mean, pretty much, yes. I'm fairly grinchy with that one. But the truth is, look, I thoroughly enjoyed it, right? But only in parts, right? There were parts I'm like, can we get past this, right? However, there were wonderful scenes like the scenes in the house and the lawn and the candy cane, the hook man, right? The hook man, that was hilarious to me, right? And I do like all of the little Easter eggs and callbacks, right? But my favorite callback in the whole thing actually is Cosmo, right?
Yeah.
They address, in a very flat, fly by night way. Oh, yeah, remember the collector and we did blah 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 blah. And Cosmo is now there as a part of the team, kind of just being around, where you would think that would be a kind of, oh yeah, we dropped this as fan service and have a nice day, right? Oh yeah, Cosmos brought in from the comics. No, they kept it, right? But they also kept the dog part of Cosmo, where it's like, hey, give me the treat, right? So for me, those little touches there, those are the things that actually endear me to it. Now, my wife thoroughly loved it, and as soon as she found out I was doing this, was like, oh, I'll watch it again with you, right? That is her favorite thing now, right? It's Charlie Brown Christmas special. Now this.
What else will be coming?
Who knows? All right, Waylon.
Die Hard.
As far as fitting it in with the rest of the MCU, you're more or less for this round of questions.
Well, the Easter eggs they drop. Was it distracting? Was it fitted?
I thought the whole thing was hugely entertaining, especially the little gift exchange at the very end, which was just chock full of Easter eggs. The whole notion of Kevin Bacon is arguably an Easter egg from, I think, the first Guardians movie. I just found the whole thing really entertaining. I don't think any of it was particularly distracting. I really loved it. I thought the whole thing was goofily enjoyable, and I thought it fit the Guardians, well, this version of the Guardians tone very well. I've been reading comics long enough that I remember the original Guardians that had nothing to do with any of these people.
I just realized there was an Easter egg I didn't notice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
When they were in his house,
Mm-hmm.
and he was doing everything he could to slow them down, throwing things, tripping them, getting clever. I'm like, well, there's another Kevin that did that.
Yeah, Home Alone.
Well,
That was
yeah.
Right.
Alistair. Yeah.
So
When people break into your house over Christmas.
that's right. That's what you do.
Good catch. I never even thought of that one.
No, you trip them in your house. And then
Very good. Yeah, there were so many of those. Like I said, you can see a lot, all those influences of that. Because James Gunn, let's face it, is essentially a fan. So when you do fan service, when you're James Gunn, you're giving us what we'd want. So
I will miss him when he's gone to to DC. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the things I was going to bring up towards the end as far as tying this in, because of course it led very much to the trailer for Guardians 3, but that we'll hold on to that. So I actually wanted to bring up that little animated bit that Jen did, because starting off with the past, because of course Yondo is gone, so we can't bring in the father figure, so to speak. So they kind of bring it in with the Grinch kind of aspect of Yando, and kind of in that. What was your perspective of the two bookend pieces of the Yando story with Peter Quill? And with that, now we'll start with Rob.
So at first, I'm like, oh, which of these guys has COVID and why are they doing it animated? That was the first thing I went to, which is a sad commentary on our world, right?
We live in.
But then after I watched it, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. All the light switches went back on to like Garfield and Charlie Brown and stuff. I loved how purposely terrible the animation was. And I mean that lovingly, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was beautiful.
It was like 7. I'm like, oh man, it was literally like a flashback to like a lot of really terrible 70s stuff, like when they did the sequel to Frosty the Snowman, right? Or when they did like the animated Rankin Bass stuff, right? Some of that, it kind of reminded me of that. And I just thought, it was a really nice epilogue and our prologue and a really nice epilogue for everything. And I thought that the one thing it did really well too is it sort of set the table for what was coming. It really sort of played into, okay, this is Christmas. It's going to have little pangs of nostalgia. It's going to have, all the trimmings of a Christmas special, but also it's not. And I really thought that was nice.
All right, Jen.
I mean, we all knew from watching Volume 1 and Volume 2 that Yondu was a secret softie. So to see, the animated, he's got this tough guy persona, even as Quill as a kid. Like, no, we ain't got time for Christmas in here. To see that, and then the very end, the change of heart, it was like the Grinch's heart growing 3 sizes that day.
I expected that animation.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And to know that he did appreciate Quill and the new customs that he kind of brought to the ship, and the kind of the togetherness. But you also know that as being a Ravager and someone who collects space junk and sells it, he's gonna wonder what this gift was and why Quill presented it to him. And so to keep that was kind of a special nod. Well, hey, he likes this kid. I like that.
All right, Damien.
No, I mean, it was a fitting bow tie, right? It made sense. If you look at how things kind of ended with Yondu in the other movie, and then to have this level of a callback was very nice, right? It weaves right into what they were already built. They had already built, so that I don't know. I enjoyed it, and at the same time, once again, I'm like, okay, that's nice. Let's move on where we're going with all of this, eventually. And then we look at, I'm very, very much like Rob, Waylon, and Raster on this, where this version of the Guardians, right? And that's an important distinction for me, because I have some action figures in the box back there that represent, that old late 80s, early 90s Guardians, where Yondu looks slightly different.
Just a bit.
Right? And then I have, some comic versions of Peter Quill that look and behave slightly different. So, with that being said, it'll be interesting to see how all of this moves forward with Marvel phase. What phase are we in at this point?
I think we're in 5.
38.
Okay. All right. We're heading into our goth phase. Got it. Yeah. Right. That's going to be it. So we're going to go into our goth
I'm sorry, I'm not tracking very well tonight. We're talking about the animated sections.
Yeah, as far as
Um,
being bookends to the whole thing.
because of the way my work's been going lately, I was just punchy enough when I started watching this that I actually had a moment of, wait, is this whole thing cartoon? Am I misremembering what I saw in the trailer? And then I figured out what was going on, and I thought it was great. It was, as you said, it was a great way to bring in Yondu. It was a nice little setup for the thing, and I read somewhere that they used the old rotoscope styles. They were deliberately calling back the 70s, 80s, early 80s animation styles. I thought it was really well done. It was a nice, enjoyable little touch that they absolutely didn't need to do, but I thought it really worked.
All right. Raster?
Speaking of the rotoscope, I was really impressed with actually how good it looked compared to what I know the rotoscope was, and because when you look back at the Lord of the Rings, which is one of the most famous examples of sketchy, but you love the topic so much that you kind of overlook it. This was done. I think they just couldn't bring themselves to trash it just so as badly as the '70s methods were. But they did a good job of emulating a little bit of that cheese. I noticed some particular glitches. I'm like, I know that they had to intentionally do that because those were film artifacts and they're not on film. Something else, you know, and there's another Marvel property that might explain some of Damien's disgruntlement with the differences between the characters uh, in the past and in the current incarnation, given that this is supposed to be 616 um, and the current continuity. There is another property that involves someone with horns that might explain why we're starting to see some slippage and a little bit strangeness in the MCU, which is supposed to be Prime, but we're starting to see more and more drifting. And I think that this was also a nod to that. Although I would have kind of wanted to see, I kind of wanted to see Yondu as a Force ghost hovering over Peter. And Peter's like, why are you here? Okay.
Well, they hinted at the end at another Christmas special. Maybe next year it'll be some version of A Christmas Carol, and Yondu and whoever else will be some of the ghosts.
That'll be fantastic.
Who knows? So, I kind of wanted to. I agree with a lot of what you're saying, good and bad. Um, one thing I wanted to point out on my perspective is when you think of a lot of Guardians as very much from Peter's perspective, or at least from his life experience, it totally makes sense that style of animation because that's what Peter would have grown up with. You know,
Yep.
because that's what we were talking about our childhood. That would have been his childhood, is seeing those kind of specials for Christmas. And since he, even though the end is him relating his end of the tale, and of course then it's very much a Christmas Carol in that aspect where you think that here you have yonder Scrooge, where he really turned out to Merry Christmas, God bless us everyone kind of vibe to that. So even though it's just him and Peter there. So yeah, I definitely saw a lot of that, and that's one of the reasons I particularly appreciated them doing those choices. So um I wanted to kind of bring up, you guys brought up Cosmo, so that was one element I wanted to bring up. We had a couple of new or shifted characters. Of course, we have Groot maturing somewhat, and he's definitely looking like a different Groot than his father was. So I wanted to kind of get perspectives on your perspective of the characters, the new ones as well as old ones, how some of the changes, how characters were kind of developed or shown a little differently. We mentioned about Mantis and Drax a little bit. So I wanted to kind of hear perspectives. Any one of that stood out to you? So Jen, you want to start?
Unlike everyone else on this panel, I am not as well versed with the Guardians comic series. I promise one day I may be able to get to it. I'm still trying to work through the copious amounts of the Captain
It is
America and
very,
Bucky
very
volumes.
different. You don't have to do that to yourself if you don't
Yeah.
want to.
Okay.
It's the Marvel Universe. You can start, restart.
Oh, even better, even better. So I am not as versed in how these characters have changed from the comics. I will say over the course of just the MCU in general, the changes. Um, with Mantis, apparently this was a big new thing for everyone to find out that she was Quill's sister. But for me, I kind of assumed that when we first met her on, when we in volume 2. Um, but so with Mantis, I'm loving how her character's growing. Especially from this meek, shy little character who has been controlled her entire life to her own individual person. And then she's trying to make a space for herself on the team as well, not just as Peter's sister, but she's trying to be someone that can really be counted on, if they're saving the galaxy. And with this one, we can see that somewhat. But I really love how she would make Kevin Bacon sleep. And just like, no, just sleep. I really want that power. But or at least, yeah, I definitely do. But as for Drax, he's still this loud, boisterous individual. I still love his humor. It's probably one of my favorite parts of the entire special is Drax and him learning about Christmas and his little elf man that he carries around. And but for me, I can't really go into more on it because I'm not sure how the characters have changed other than maybe looks
Well,
or
even over the
what we're
course of the
seeing here.
movies. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you brought up a couple of points. So, yeah. All right, Damien.
So what I will say is that with just some of the maturity that has gone from film to film, it was a nice bow tie moment at the end, because you're watching Peter constantly dealing with loss, right? I don't know who my father is. I've lost my mom. I've now been kidnapped and brought into space by these people who are kind of like a family, but I wasn't sure, right? And then you saw the last Guardians movie surrounding family. And that right after all of that, he lost Gamora, right? Which is someone I'm close to that I immensely care about, right? And hasn't been okay since, right? So I believe that the way they did the reaction with him and Palm when they were doing the Mantis reveal, I think that made 100% sense, and that was very much a highlight for me, right? And then it seemed like a very genuine response that would come from a person that's dealing with all of this familial trauma and loss and X, Y, and Z. And so that part's good. Drax is still consistent. Rocket's gonna be Rocket, right? I don't think that character needs to change too much away from what he is, right? You saw the immediate, oh, you got a talking raccoon, I'll kill you, right? That literally he didn't miss a beat, right? But then when he got the arm, he was completely satisfied. And I'm sitting here going, okay, I've got to rewind this and watch for which arm that is, right? Because I'm like, hold it. We know that there was more than one, but like, so it had to be the non-golden black new arm that we're used to seeing. But with that, just the genuine reaction of it all, right? And it'll be interesting to see how this plays out long term, right? With Gamora still not being a part of the team and then moving on, but then adding in people like Cosmo onto and giving Sean Gunn's character, and I can't remember his name.
Kraglin.
Yes, right? him having more of a role on the team now. So that'll be pretty interesting, depending on what happens with Goth Emo Face.
All right, Waylon.
I'm a big enough geek that I also watched all of the cartoons they had running like 3-4 years ago. And the major shift in Cosmo's voice from the cartoons to this really threw me the first like 2 times Cosmo spoke. I had a minute or two sitting there going, wait, what? Oh, right, different. I like how they brought Cosmo in. I like that Mantis had a lot more to do than just sort of shuffle around in the background. And then as others were saying, a lot of the other characterization stayed true. Drax didn't really change, and he's probably never going to. Who else was I thinking of just now? The little bits with Rocket stayed fit. Nebula just sort of being the whole, I can't believe you guys are dragging me into this silliness. I thought those all worked really well.
All right. Raster?
You know, I really love Nebula going, okay, what can I do? I got an idea. Hey. And I want desperately to know what Rocket wanted the arm for. I want to know what he's going to do.
I don't think
the
he wanted
vibranium one.
I don't think he wanted for anything, because didn't that come up in the first one where he sent Quill off to get that guy's eye or something? Just like, I didn't think you'd do it. It was just the joke. I thought it was just that sort of thing.
Right, but she went and got it for him just out of the blue.
Right.
And I'm just picturing the scene where he's muttering something about, if I only had some adamantium, I could do whatever. And so she brought him, about a 1/4 metric ton of adamantium, and what's he going to do with it? I want to know. I want to see the end result. And I hope they pay that off later.
And I would like to interject right quick. I'm sorry. But, with that, it ties back into Infinity War when Rocket and is fighting right beside of Bucky, and he says, I want that arm. And he's like, oh, I'm going to get that arm.
Yep.
And now I just have to worry about Bucky's safety, because as a Bucky stan, if Nebula hurt him, I will have to start a war. So
you got to look at the color on the arm. The arm coloring is different.
That
arm
could be a prototype. It could be a prototype. It could be a prototype from either of the designers.
Well, Wakanda's in kind of a mess right now, so maybe it was a spare from there. So,
because I didn't look at the I didn't look at the shoulder piece. I only looked at the coloring that was on there.
Yeah, it was the dark silver with the gold in it.
They moved it really fast
Right.
So.
But that's definitely one a lot of people locked into. Yeah.
It could have a star on it. You never know.
Yeah.
Nobody knows where that arm went.
I'm hoping he gave it willingly. He's decided, nope, I'm done fighting. But
Nebula?
Yeah.
So, all right. Kind of along those lines, tying in with, of course, every holiday special of that time period had a Hollywood guest star. And as we've kind of mentioned, we, of course, had Kevin Bacon. And, all the confusion between the actor and the roles and all those things that they kind of really played with. I definitely heard a lot of fan kind of mentality is confusing those two, because hopefully none of the people here or the people watching are those kind of fans, but getting confused on actors as opposed to what they can do. So what did you think about Kevin Bacon as the choice for the star turn in this? So David, I think you're up.
Hey, it made perfect sense, right? When you look at, hey, you made Quill the hero that he is, right? When they recalled hey, you saved the town by dancing. He saved an entire universe by dancing, right? It makes sense, right? It's a callback to, again, the time period right before Quill kind of was snatched up, right? Where okay, he would have been around that age and those things would have made sense to him. If you look at all of the nostalgia stuff he has from just the little bits of the headphones and the tape player and what have you, um, it works, right? It works 100%. Personally, it probably should have been Bruce Willis, but that's okay.
Bruce is in good enough shape too, so
I was thinking
unfortunately.
Swayze, but you can't do that.
Even worse
Could have
shape.
been exactly.
Was Die Hard even out when Quill was abducted?
That's That's true. That's the
Oh.
question.
All right. Waylon, what are your thoughts on Kevin Bacon in this?
Made perfect sense because they reference him a couple of times. I know there was the whole bit with the first Guardians about the greatest hero, Kevin Bacon, and then that came up again in, I think, Infinity War,
Mm-hmm.
when Quill was going, is Footloose still the greatest movie ever made? And Spider-Man was going, it never was. What are you talking about? I don't see how it could have been anyone else, because I think he's the only movie star they've referenced in the MCU, and certainly specifically to the Guardians. And clearly Kevin Bacon was having fun with this. I mean, he's a good sport about this stuff. He's going along with the whole 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon thing that's out there. So I think he was the absolute perfect choice for it. Plus, he's a musician, and through the musical numbers, which I really enjoyed,
Hasselhoff.
it's a great choice for that as well. So I thought he was the perfect fit for it.
All right. Well, Raster, if you want to add that now.
Hasselhoff.
They actually mentioned him by name though.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, because didn't Quill imagine his dad was David Hasselhoff when he was a kid?
Oh yeah. You're right.
yeah. So I mean, that's also still very similar time period, and in and of itself, that sort of actors secretly being the characters they played is an 80s trope. I mean, that's been done over and over. So we just keep unraveling all the layers of nods in this. Like I said, I think 5 years from now, they're going to be finding new stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But, honestly, as far as Christmas specials go, I think this one really does deserve to be near the top, just for the fact that the groaners that were in there, I think, were intentional, and they themselves are nods back to the tradition of questionable Christmas specials.
Hey, Rob.
So I loved the jokes about Footloose. I thought they were great. They made me feel nostalgic. Pretty much from the time he came on screen to the end, you felt really nostalgic for everything Kevin Bacon, right? And, the fact that they sort of made him this regular guy that he actually kind of is in real life anyway. He's this regular guy who plays guitar and just hangs out. You can totally see how having Kevin Bacon as Kevin Bacon in this little escapade really helps them flesh out the character of Quill. You kind of get a lens into where Quill's sort of mental and moral development came from, right? And then the fact that you see, Kevin Bacon scared when he's in the house and he's calling the police, right? There's these moments where Kevin Bacon is sort of doing these things where he's touching on sort of real things that happen to actors that are scary, like home invasion, stalking, okay, this is cool. We need to stop now, right? Everybody's seen that happen, right, with a celebrity. So the fact that he got to be himself and be very personable and funny, but also sort of touch upon this, okay, guys, there's times we don't do this. I thought that was really, really great. Outside of Kevin Bacon, I loved how the fact they go to Hollywood and they're like, hey, we want to meet the great Kevin Bacon, right? They just sort of played into the whole spirit of what everyone thinks Hollywood is, right? And what it actually isn't. And we got the peer behind the curtain a little bit with Kevin Bacon in terms of his personality and what he likes and stuff. And I have no idea if he reads comics. I have no idea if he's this nice in real life. I'm assuming he is, but man, I just think of him in a completely different, hilariously fun way now. And I think if you're him at this point, although I'm sure his checkbook is very, very happy he was in this movie or this episode. I think that it casts him in sort of a whole new light for roles going forward too. I mean, it does. He did a lot for the MCU because he made it lighter. He made it sort of grounded in a real world, but he also made himself available for projects we wouldn't normally think of him, if that makes sense.
Well, I'm not sure if I agree with that, only because he's done this before, right? He had a whole run on Will and Grace of Kevin Bacon being Kevin Bacon.
See, I've never really seen Will and Grace, so I didn't know that.
Yeah. And he was a regular on the show as Kevin Bacon.
There's a few actors who've done that kind of roles.
Yeah.
So,
They at least didn't cast him as Dick Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
Will Wheaton kind of pioneered that, with Evil Will Wheaton. And there was an article out the other day where he expressed some regret for bringing that so realistically to life. And I imagine, after a few years, you go back and you see it on the television where you're going by and you're like, oh, wow, I was a dick. Oh, I hope they don't keep thinking that. So it was nice that they let Kevin Bacon just be a nice guy.
Yeah.
And you have to have some literal Grinch persona that they had to overcome.
My favorite Kevin Bacon story that I heard was he did this Footloose recreation for, I think it was the Jimmy Fallon Tonight Show at one point. And there's this weird passing line he said that got Jimmy all freaked out. He was like, yeah, I was willing to do it, but I had to go rent Footloose. And Fallon's like, you don't own a copy? He's like, no, I don't have it. I haven't seen it in years. So I had to go down and rent it on streaming before I could do the dance thing again.
That sounds about right for most Hollywood, honestly. All right, Jen?
As I'm more of a Kevin Bacon fan, not Footloose, sorry to Peter Quill, but from Tremors. So, growing up, Tremors was like my all-time scary movie. But, to see his progression of characters, like Damien said in Will and Grace, him just playing himself, and to see that his persona come across, whether that's his actual persona or not, or if that was just played up for camera, it was fun to see because it kind of gave us that glimpse of celebrity life almost, and we were able to really delve into what makes him tick, and just to know that a woman with antennas on her head scares the living daylights out of him, and it's understandable. That's very relatable. But yeah, I don't think it could have been anyone but Kevin Bacon, simply because for the last decade and a half, maybe longer, it's when anybody thinks of 80 stars and the whole 6 degrees of separation thing, it's kind of gone along with that. You don't do that with any other celebrity. You do that with Kevin Bacon. You can try with the others, but they pale in comparison.
Okay, all right. I can see your points. I kind of agree with Damien that I think knowing James Gunn, he probably would have dropped a Die Hard thing in there somewhere, but it's kind of hard when so many of the key faces are not really in a condition to do anything about that. So, but yeah. So we're getting a little closer on time. So I was going to have us all do a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Does anybody want to kind of really chime in with something fast before we get to my last question?
I saw Kevin Bacon at a grocery store on 14th Street and Lex in New York City in 1999.
So you're like right there.
So you've won.
Yeah.
It took me a while. He left the store before I realized it was Kevin Bacon, because I'm like, wow, that looks like it's Kevin Bacon. And then the person I was with was like, yeah, it was. I'm like, oh, well, because you just never, you never think you're gonna see them just doing regular things, right?
Yeah, out in the
You
wild.
just,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's the whole hook, line, and sinker of the mystique of what they do. You just don't think these people go to the grocery store. They buy socks. You just don't think of that stuff, right?
Exactly.
So, but I think too that now everybody in the MCU is tied into 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
I was thinking that too. So, and that also, does that mean that this is an alternative version of Kevin Bacon we now see on television, or is this the 616 Kevin Bacon?
He's a squirrel. He's a squirrel. Secret Wars is coming. He is a squirrel.
Maybe.
What is
That'd be
the
awesome.
what happens when Doctor Strange meets that an alternate Kevin Bacon? Like this.
Scarlet Witch kills him.
Yeah.
Who knows? Anybody else want to chime with their 6 degrees?
I mean, I guess it's one. Palm was at Dragon Con in 2018, and I got to see her there. We had a very nice conversation about Infinity War. And she's Mantis. Mantis kidnapped Kevin Bacon. So does that mean I kidnapped Kevin Bacon?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
I guess I did it with you, since I dealt with her too during that Dragon Con. So yeah.
All right, we're all in.
Yeah, we're definitely all in.
We know you guys. So
Well, actually, my Kevin Bacon number is two different ways. I do a lot of theater stuff on the side. I do tech theater, and I've worked for both David Copperfield and Dolly Parton, and they're both very close to Kevin Bacon on that little game thing. So extend me out one, and there we are.
Forget Kevin Bacon. You said Dolly. That's a whole nother panel.
Well, Dolly has played with Kevin Bacon's band, so there you go.
See there? Okay.
With the Bacon Brothers.
So if you are ever curious, for our audience, to see where you kind of tie in, there is the Oracle of Bacon out there on the internets. You can go ahead and get as close out. It only goes to like big name people, but do your connection to that person, and then you can find your own, what your Kevin Bacon number is. So, all right. So we will tie this up with one question. Then one thing I want to do at the end is, Waylon, we'll start with you. Pick the Easter egg that you love the most.
Bucky's arm. Had to be.
All right. Raster?
That's a tough one for me, because yes, Bucky's arm is a great one, but honestly, I love the throwback animation. That kind of choked me up a little bit. I was like, not only do we get to see Yondu, and we dealt with animation that clearly was a work of art and an act of love by the creators of the special.
All right, Rob?
So I'm either going to be, or I'm going to look like more of an ass than I normally do. Did I actually see Mark Hamill in this?
Yes.
No.
Yes. No, he's in it.
Yeah. I was like, I literally blinked. I'm like, I think that's Mark Hamill.
Mhm.
And so that is my favorite, because it's Mark Hamill. He doesn't do anything. He's just Mark Hamill, which I thought was great.
Just sipping the blue milk, man.
I think as a Mark Hamill fan, I will have to look back, because I don't actually remember that. So
No, he's one of the bits with Internet LA. He's in it.
Yep.
It's like a blink and you miss it, but he's there.
I'll have to check that out. All right, Jen.
I am a lot like Steve Rogers in the fact that I would start a war over Bucky Barnes. So other than Bucky's arm, as previously stated by Waylon and Raster, I love the callback animation as well. Like I said, growing up, these Christmas specials were wonderful for, a kid who didn't have cable. We recorded them. I watched them year round. So, that really brought my childhood back to me. So I loved how they tied in that little bit of animation, whether that was budgetary concerns or just flat out Easter egg. It was wonderful to see.
All right, Damon.
Well, obviously, we know I'm going to go with Bucky's arm, but the truth is the giant Easter egg of it being Kevin Bacon that they go get right, in and of itself, it is actually one of the best pieces that's in there, right? When you're thinking about it, like we're going to kidnap a real person, right? That's not, hey, this isn't a Marvel thing, this isn't a such and such thing. It's, hey, we're going to get Kevin Bacon as Kevin Bacon, right? With a real Kevin Bacon reaction if something like
The
this
hero,
happen.
Kevin Bacon.
Right, the hero Kevin Bacon, who's a disgusting
Briefly Australian.
actor. He's an actor, okay? Right? They're the worst. So when you think of that, it's like that is actually the big Easter egg that works for me, right? That it's we're gonna do something from Guardians 1 and pull Kevin Bacon and make it a whole thing. There you go.
All right. Well, I actually I will be on that same ship too, because I think there's an interesting message in there that speaks to how, those characters can inspire us, and they do lead us to make choices, hopefully, and help steer our paths. And that's one of the reasons I think we all love many of these kind of movies, because they bring out the best in us, hopefully.
Or encourage us to do human trafficking.
Maybe the entire special was a massive Easter egg. The
Knowing
whole
James Gunn
thing.
would not surprise me.
No.
So, all right. So we'll go around, since we are on now. We'll kind of share where we can find everyone. So, Waylon, you want to start where people can find you?
Sure. I am still on Twitter, at least at the present, under @WaylonSmith1. I still want to find who beat me to that one. If you search Waylon Smith on Facebook and you find an avatar with a big German Shepherd head, that's me. I've got books on Amazon. I've made a bunch of anthologies. And like I said, I write superhero reviews and such on a site called comicbookclog.com.
All right, Raster?
I'm on Facebook under the surname. And I'm pretty much there every year at Dragon Con. So, and you can probably find me somewhere near the end sci-fi track.
All right, Rob?
Yes, I am at the Dragon Con. I hear it's fabulous. I also am on, for now, Twitter and Facebook, but also Post. So, yeah, you can be a Post Toasty and jump over to Post and find me there at Rob_Levy. I'm also on the Modern Musicology podcast and the needcoffee.com website podcast and marathons of exhaustion that they do regularly.
All right, Jen?
You can find me on most of the socials with the handle Nerd Girl Jen. And I'm also at Dragon Con, if not at the American Sci-Fi Fantasy track, and alternate history, and hopefully spreading around a little bit, because I really want on a Wednesday panel for urban fantasy. So
you're a lifer, man.
You people are really trying to make Wednesday a thing.
You know what? If you do a Wednesday panel, I'm going to do a Tuesday panel. So there.
You know what? I'm going to do a Sunday panel.
Well, yeah, I'm going to come in Friday.
Pre-Sunday.
I'm going to come in on a Friday, and Damien and I are going to sit in an Arby's and talk about Superman, and it's going to count as a panel.
All right, David, you want to share yours?
Sure. You can find me at unidentified_madman over on Instagram. It is completely not work safe. It is all of my hobbies, but you can also find me on the Stuff You Like, Stuff We Hate podcast, and hanging out with Rob every so often over at the needcoffee.com Weekend Justice podcast.
All
and
right.
of course at Dragon Con on just about everyone's programming track.
I tell everybody to use you all, so that's part of what I do. So yes, and as far as I go, you can find more about the American Science Fiction Fantasy Media track. The track is the name with the biggest mouthful, which never mind, that could be taken really badly. But on that note, you can find us on Facebook generally. I'm going to be trying to do more of these panels through the new year. We'll see how this year goes. And with that, I would like all of us to wish all of our audience for now and for future here a happy holidays.
Bye.
Hi, everybody.
holidays.
Happy holidays.
Happy Midwinter Festival of your choice.
I don't know
Alright.
why I'm waving. My camera's broke. But yay.
Colon switches.